For 11 years, the staff of St. Brigade's Children's Hospital walked past the same quiet old man, pushing the same gray mop bucket down the same shining hallway. And not one of them knew that the entire wing they were standing in had been built with his money, or why. They knew him as Sam. Sam from housekeeping. The night custodian, the man who waxed the floors so well you could see the ceiling lights in them, who never raised his voice, who always knew which vending machine was broken and which family in the waiting room could use a cup of coffee they hadn't asked for. They saw him every single day, and they had no idea who he was. Stay with me to the end of this story, because the moment a young nurse finally found out the truth, standing beside him at 2 a.m. in an empty lobby, she asked him one question. And his answer is the reason I couldn't sleep the night I learned it. His name was Sam Holloway, and he was 68 years old. To everyone at St. Brigade's, Sam was part of the building the way the elevators and the stairwells were part of the building. He came in at night, after most of the daytime noise had died down, and he moved through the children's wing in his soft gray uniform, quiet as a held breath. He mopped the floors. He emptied the bins. He wiped down the railings small hands gripped all day. He did the work that nobody notices until it stops being done. The staff liked Sam, and the distracted way busy people like a fixture. The doctors nodded at him. The nurses said morning Sam, even though it was night. The kids, the patients, the sick children who lived in that wing for weeks and months at a time, the kids actually loved him, because Sam always had time for them in a way the grown-ups in white coats rarely did. He'd stop his bucket to admire a drawing. He kept a little stash of stickers in his cart. He knew which child was scared of the dark and made sure to mop slowly outside their door so they'd hear him there. A quiet presence, long after visiting hours ended. But none of them, not the chief of medicine, not the longest-serving nurse, not the board of directors who ran the place, none of them knew the truth about the man with the mop. They didn't know that the wing they all worked in had a name. It was carved into a bronze plaque in the main lobby, the kind of plaque everyone walks past 1,000 times and never reads. The Eleanor Holloway Children's Wing. They didn't know that the entire wing, every bed, every machine that beeped through the night keeping children alive, every warm yellow wall painted to look less like a hospital and more like a place a kid could get better in, had been paid for, in full, by a single anonymous gift made 11 years earlier. And they had no possible way of knowing that the man who'd written that check, the man whose fortune had built the place, was the same man quietly mopping its floors at 2 o'clock in the morning. To understand why, you have to go back 40 years. 40 years before this story, Sam Holloway was not a wealthy man. He was a young father with grease under his fingernails and not much in the bank, working at an auto shop, married to a woman named Ruth, raising a little girl named Eleanor. Eleanor was 7 years old. She had a gap in her front teeth and a laugh that was much too big for her small body, and she was, by every account Sam ever gave, the entire reason the sun came up in the morning. When Eleanor got sick, it came fast, the way these things sometimes do with children. And the hospital they took her to, the only one nearby, this many years ago, simply did not have what she needed. They didn't have the specialists. They didn't have the equipment. They didn't have the wing. The nearest hospital that could have helped her was hours away, and by the time anyone understood how serious it was, there was no time left to get her there. Eleanor Holloway died at 7 years old, in a hospital that loved her and tried its best, and simply did not have the things that might have saved her. Sam never blamed the doctors. He told people, much later, that they'd cried with him. What broke him wasn't anger, it was the helplessness, the unbearable arithmetic of a child who could have lived if only the building she was in had been a different building. He sat in that waiting room the night she died, and he made a promise to a 7-year-old who could no longer hear it. He promised that no other father was going to sit in a room like that, helpless, because the place didn't have what it needed. He had no money to keep that promise. So he went and made some. It took him the better part of his life. Sam was a quiet man, but he was a relentless one. He took the auto shop he worked at, and he learned every inch of the business. And then he bought it. And then he bought another. And then he built something much bigger out of the bones of small, honest work. He was never flashy about it. He drove old cars. He ate at diners. Ruth, his wife, stayed with him through all of it, and the two of them lived far below what they could have, because the money was never really the point. The money was a promise to a little girl with a gap in her teeth. By the time Sam was in his late 50s, he had built a fortune larger than he ever would have believed possible. And Ruth, the love of his life, had passed away, quietly, in her sleep, having lived to see what he was about to do, but not quite long enough to see it finished. So Sam Holloway took nearly everything he had, and he gave it to St. Brigades, on one condition that he held to fiercely, that his name appear nowhere. The wing was to be named Eleanor. Not Sam. Not Holloway even, just Eleanor, his daughter, the reason. He didn't want a building named after a businessman. He wanted a place named after a little girl, so that other little girls could get better in a room that carried her name. And then he did the thing that no one, no lawyer, no board member, no friend, could talk him out of. He applied for a job at the hospital his money had built, as a night custodian. They didn't know who he was, of course. The gift had been anonymous, run through layers of legal paperwork specifically, so that it could never be traced back to a quiet older man in a gray uniform. To the hiring office, Sam Holloway was just a polite, dependable applicant with good references, who didn't mind working nights. They hired him without a second thought. People asked him, the few who got close enough to ask, why a man his age would want a job like that. Sam always had a simple answer, and it was even true as far as it went. He'd say he liked working with his hands. He'd say he didn't do well with empty days. He'd say a body needs a reason to get up. He never told them the real reason. The real reason was that up on those floors, in the rooms his daughter's name had built, children who would have died 40 years ago were getting better. And Sam Holloway wanted to be near it. He wanted to be in the building when it happened. He couldn't save Eleanor, but he could keep the floors clean and the railings wiped and the broken vending machines reported, so that the families pacing those halls at night, the ones living through the exact thing he'd lived through, would be in a place that felt cared for, all the way down to the shine on the floor. He served the wing the only way a grieving father had left to serve it, quietly, on his knees with a rag, in the small hours, where no one was watching. For 11 years, no one knew. And then came Lena. Lena was a new pediatric nurse, 26 years old, 3 months into her first real job and running on the particular exhaustion of someone who cares too much and hasn't yet learned how to put it down. She'd noticed Sam early on, noticed that he was the only other person regularly in the building at the deadest hours of the night, noticed that he always seemed to know which family in the waiting room was about to fall apart. They'd struck up the kind of friendship you can only have at 3 in the morning, in the quiet, 2 people keeping a sleeping wing alive. One night, Lena lost a patient, a little boy. She'd done everything right, and it hadn't been enough, and that's a kind of grief that no amount of training prepares you for. After, she'd walked down to the main lobby alone, the way people do when they need to fall apart somewhere no one will see. And she'd stood there in the dim emergency lighting, trying to remember how to breathe. And she found Sam already there. He was standing in front of the bronze plaque on the lobby wall, the one everybody walked past. He had his cleaning cart beside him, but he wasn't cleaning. He was just standing very still, looking at it, the way he sometimes looked at it on the hardest nights, when the wing had lost a child. Lena had never really read the plaque before. She stepped up beside him and read it now in the half-light. The Eleanor Holloway Children's Wing. "Sam," she said, her voice still raw. "Did you know her, Eleanor? You're always looking at this." And Sam Holloway, 68 years old, 11 years into keeping his secret, looked at this young nurse who had just lost a child and was trying so hard to hold herself together, and something in him decided she'd earned the truth. "She was my daughter," he said. Lena turned to look at him. She didn't understand yet. Your daughter's name is on the wing?" She passed when she was 7. A long time ago now. He kept his eyes on the plaque. A different hospital. They didn't have what she needed. There wasn't a place like this back then. He paused, and his voice went very quiet. "So I built one. And I named it after her." Lena stood absolutely frozen. The words rearranged themselves in her head slowly, and then, all at once. The custodian. The man with the mop. The man who'd worked beside her at 3 a.m. for months, who emptied her unit's bins, who kept stickers in his cart for scared kids. This man had built the wing. This man had given away a fortune and then come back to clean the floors of it. For 11 years. While everyone, herself included, walked right past him. "Sam," she whispered. "You, all of this, and you've been..." She couldn't find the end of the sentence. "Mopping the floors," he finished gently, and there was a small, tired smile in it. "I know how it looks, and this is the question Lena finally asked him, the one I told you about at the very beginning. She asked it through tears, because she genuinely could not understand it. Why? You could be anywhere. You could do anything. You could have your name on the front of the building. Why would you spend 11 years cleaning the floors of your own hospital in the middle of the night?" Sam Holloway was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because up there, on those floors, they save the children. Every night. Children who would have died when I was young are going home to their parents because of what's in those rooms now." He looked at her. "I couldn't save mine, Lena. I tried. There was nothing I could do, and there's no feeling in the world worse than that. Being a father who can't do the one thing a father is for. I spent 40 years not being able to fix it." His voice didn't break, but it got softer, the way the deepest things do. "And then I built this place, and I realized I still couldn't go up there and save anybody. I'm not a doctor. I'm a man who fixed cars. But I could do this. I could keep her wing clean. I could make sure that when a father is pacing this lobby at 2 a.m, terrified, the way I was, the floor under his feet is cared for. That somebody is awake in this building who knows exactly what he's feeling, even if he never finds out who I am." He looked back at the plaque. "It's the closest I'll ever get to tucking her in again. So I do it every night, and I'd do it for the rest of my life." Lena could not speak. She just reached out and took the old man's hand, the rough hand of a man who'd fixed cars and built fortunes and cleaned floors, and the two of them stood there together in front of a little girl's name, and neither of them said anything else for a long while, because there was nothing else that needed saying. What happened after that, the hospital handled the way Sam would have wanted. which is to say quietly. Lena kept his secret. Mostly, she told only the chief of medicine, and only because she felt the truth deserved at least one keeper in a position to protect it. And the chief, a woman who had walked past Sam Holloway for 9 years and said morning. Sam, without ever once wondering, sat in her office after hearing the story and wept. The way you weep when you realize the most important person in the building has been the one you noticed least. They didn't throw him a gala. They knew better. He'd have hated it, and he'd probably have quit. But things changed in small ways that mattered. The staff who learned the truth, and over time, carefully, a few more did, never looked at the man with the mop the same way again. Not because of his money, because of what the money was for. Because they finally understood that the quietest man in the building was carrying the heaviest, most beautiful thing in it. And the children kept getting better. In the rooms Eleanor's name had built, while her father kept the floors clean beneath them. Every single night. I think about this story more than almost any other I know. And not because of the twist, not because the janitor turned out to be a secret millionaire. The money is just the hook. The thing underneath it is so much bigger than money. It's the idea that greatness, real greatness, almost never announces itself. We're trained to look for it in the obvious places, the white coat, the corner office, the name on the building. We look up. And the whole time, the most extraordinary person in the room might be the one we've trained ourselves to look right through. The one with the mop, the one cleaning up after us at 2 a.m. The one whose grief became a gift so quiet that for 11 years not a single person knew they were standing inside it. Did any of them know the quiet man mopping that floor had funded the entire wing? No, they didn't. And that's the part that should stop us cold. Because if a man can build a hospital, give away everything he has, and then serve it in secret for over a decade, without anyone noticing, what are we missing about the quiet people all around us? The custodian, the night shift worker, the old man on the bus, the person doing the invisible work that holds the whole world together while the rest of us walk past. Looking up, looking for greatness in all the wrong places. The greatness was on its knees with a rag the whole time. So here's what I'll ask you. Tomorrow, somewhere in your day, you're going to pass someone doing the quiet work. The cleaning, the serving, the unglamorous, invisible work that everyone needs and no one sees. And you're going to feel the urge to walk past them the way we walk past everyone like that. Don't. Look at them. Say their name if you know it. Learn it if you don't. Because you have absolutely no idea what that quiet person is carrying, or what they've already given that the world will never see. If this story moved you, leave one word in the comments, Eleanor, for the little girl whose name built a place where other children get to grow up. Just so I know you made it to the end, and so I know there are still people out there who will stop and see the quiet ones. And if you believe the most extraordinary people are usually the ones who'd never tell you so, then subscribe, because those are the only people we make stories about on this channel. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.